You're on.
Hello everybody, I'm Andrew Lawhead and I was the president of SAL Group 2.
I'm Joey Johnson and I was the pilot.
I'm Rafael Temple and I was the flight surgeon.
I'm Veronica Narcus and I was the investigating officer.
Next slide. Alright, the plane we were inspecting was the Varga Kachina. It crashed in Burns, Oregon, which is right here on the map where the blue arrow is. Alright, our findings on the pilot. Our pilot lived in Washington and he was in the process of flying to Oregon. He had 302 flight hours, 42 hours in the Varga, and he was 53 years old and completely certified to be flying the plane he was flying. When the plane crashed, the pilot was decapitated, and as you can see in the picture, we found his headset on the ground that showed us he was decapitated. Alright, the pilot, he was going through a divorce at the time, so he was having some family problems. So he was drinking 4 hours before he went flying. There's something called the bottle to throttle time, which the limit is 8 hours, which means if you drink, you have to wait 8 hours before you're allowed to fly. He was only 4 hours on bottle to throttle. So he was completely drunk. He also had coronary artery disease with 60% blockage in one of his arteries. And we found with more research that irregular heavy drinking can lead to heart disease or heart failure. Next slide. Just go to the next slide. The plane, it passed its pre-flight inspection, so there was no mechanical or electrical problems with the plane itself. When it went down, it crashed at a 70-degree angle. Can you go back to the last slide? As you can see in this picture, the next picture, my bad. It crashed at a 70-degree angle, which was very steep. So that told us the pilot was probably not in control of his plane at the time. When it crashed, the plane wrinkled on the side in front of the wing, as you can see right there. That shows us that the angle was higher because it crumpled, and that made the angle look a little lower during the crash. The crankshaft also detached from the rest of the plane, and when the plane crashed, there you can see the crankshaft detached. When the plane crashed, its angle was so steep and the impact was so hard that the tail actually came off the top. It's called scorpion. It scorpioned off the top and the tail actually landed in front of the plane. And also when it hit the ground, the airspeed indicator slapped down so hard that it left a mark, which told us that he was flying at 82 knots when he hit the ground, which is 94 to 95 miles an hour. At the crash site, there was no fire present, so there was no electrical problems with the plane. It kind of rebounded when it hit the ground. It bounced up and went back when it wrinkled. The fuel tank was full, as we could see. It kind of compressed, the wing compressed down on the fuel tank, and the fuel expanded out and kind of puffed out the fuel tank, so we could see that it was entirely full. So he was not very far into his flight when he crashed. And the pilot was decapitated when he crashed, and he was also transected by his seatbelt. And you can see the tail there. That's where it scorpioned off, landed in front of the plane.
So our causes. The pilot went to a bar before he flew and drank in excess. So along with that and his heart condition, his heart was under a lot of stress. He was flying from Washington to Oregon. The reason was unknown, and the flying conditions were not good. He had to go by our IFR rules. So that combined with his drinking led to the accident. And that again is the plane that landed at the steep angle. Next one. All right, so the poor conditions with his heart failure and his drinking led to him not being able to fly the plane. And with those conditions, he crashed. Next one. Next one. All right, so as he was flying, he had a heart attack from all the stress on his heart, and he was unable to fly, and he lost control of the plane and went straight down and crashed.
All right, and our recommendation is we think the FAA should closer monitor the bottle to throttle time and make sure that is enforced so everyone is definitely within that, because it could have been prevented. They could have realized that he was in no condition to be flying and stopped him from going up in the air. Thank you. That is our PowerPoint. We're going to move on to our Word document.
Are we done with the video, sir?
You need to plug in this into the audio. Okay, and I think that's on. So, you ready to play the video? I hope it'll work. I think it will.
Okay.
Close to it.
Oh, it's
Right.
Bottom right, you need to unmute it. Right here where my finger is.
That'd be good, guys.
Right click. There you go. Unmute that. Okay, and now you're gonna blow us away. He is gonna have a
Your face is
amp
so
it up.
Give me enough. You've had quite enough, sir. You don't owe me. Too much. Go home. I can't believe you. After all these years, you're still right behind my back. How could you do this to me? Are we
There's another one.
We got around.
We had to.
Call it on the GoPro by another buddy of his, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Like all good things.
This is Borga Tuna N5074B requesting takeoff.
Are you sure you're within the ball of the throttle range? You will 60.
Yeah, it's been 4 hours.
Alright, clear for takeoff.
All righty, good on him. I'll have a little bit of acting there. Nothing like slapping somebody and, all right, you better not. Don't ever make her mad.
That was slapstick, by the way.
Slapstick,
Didn't
not
hit him.
slapping. I love it. All righty. Okay, so you want to go through then the handout.
You can go first.
Okay, what we did, our group went to Embry-Riddle and got assigned a plane crash. From the beginning, it was evident that the plane was definitely crashed. First thing we noticed was the lack of fire, like there wasn't anything problem there. And the forceful impact, because it was like a really like the wrinkle and like the angle. And the tail actually like snapped off and was in front of the plane, so like just flew forward. It's called the scorpion effect. And all the evidence indicated that it was a very steep angle of attack. That's like the main thing that like the guy kept saying. He was like, oh, look at those wrinkles, or oh, look what happened here. Like he was almost like straight down. It was like 20 degrees off from being straight down.
So what we found was not a factor was basically the plane. There was no electrical or mechanical problems with it, and the plane was full of fuel, and we did not find fire or anything like that. And the way the wings were bent forward due to inertia, so the plane was not in spin when it went down. It went down straight down, and the tail scorpioned over.
Okay, so what is a factor? The pilot's health, inebriation, and family situation were the main factor of the plane crash. He was going through a divorce, and his wife thought that he was cheating on her, so he was not in a good place, and that caused him to drink and then fly to visit his sister in Oregon.
And the fact that the plane crashed at a very high velocity showed that the pilot was not conscious while he was flying. So the heart attack obviously caused him to not be in control of the plane.
Okay, he was 53 years old and lived in Washington, but was flying to Burns, Oregon. The pilot was decapitated and transected, so cut off at his head and at his midsection by the seatbelt. He was completely capable of flying this plane over 302 flying hours, 42 of which were been on that specific Varga. So he was perfectly capable. He had a heart problem due to his irregular drinking from his family problems.
And what we found on the plane is that it passed its pre-flight inspection before he was flying it. And most of the stuff we already talked about, the wrinklage and the tail breaking off in front of the plane.
Okay. And then we talked about how the fuel tank was pretty much full, so it just showed that he was only flying for a couple of minutes before he crashed, so he had a heart attack almost as soon as he took off.
So our conclusion is that the pilot was very unhappy with his family situation, and he went drinking before he went flying, and he was under the bottle to throttle rule. And it was dark outside, and so there was not very good flight conditions to be flying in. And he had a heart attack from his heart condition and the unusual drinking.
We found a very similar class. The Varga person who the pilot had heart failure and crashed into trees, but did not die. So that was nice.
And to prevent this type of crash in the future, we want the FAA to be more strict on the bottle to throttle rules and make sure the pilots are completely sober before flying.
And also their mental condition before flying, because if they know there's a family problem, they might know, like, I'm just going to crash this plane and commit suicide. Thank you.
All right, we're gonna round applause. Okay, constructive criticism around the room. Zwicky.
I thought you guys did really well. Again, it was just like things that you couldn't really help. Like she was sitting down, it's not her fault. And then like looking down and you think that's not really your fault. But you just make the presentation. I liked you guys' video. It was really good.
Thank you.
Next, C11.
I thought your presentation for mostly being here was really well. Your video was actually pretty dang good. I loved it. Your skit was perfect. All your information was really clear. Improvements, I thought you guys were perfect actually. There was a little bit of repeated information, but you can't really help that considering that your Word document is part of your presentation and part of your Word type overall. Great job, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, Palmer.
You guys did awesome. You guys had a cool video. Your attitude could have been a little bit more out there, outgoing. Other than that, you guys did great.
All right, so we have you did the presentation and you went over the
Video.
and the Word document.
Yep.
All right, any other comments, guys? For a question about it, how did y'all come up with 60 hours?
60 hours?
I'm sorry,
That was us.
That
That
was
was-
yours.
yeah.
For you guys, how did you decide if you're going to have the FAA limit the drinking the bottle throttle? How are they going to do that?
Maybe a pre-flight screening or.
Okay, but I'm
something
saying
like that.
4 hours. This is the FAA in Washington, D.C. So it's a great idea. I mean, how can you're in charge of the FAA now, Rafael. How are you going to ensure that 2 million pilots don't drink 4 hours before they fly?
They have it in cars. Where like you have to
Breathalyzer.
Oh,
breathalyzers inside a car.
to start the plane.
Was this his private plane?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
So it's a similar issue to drinking and driving less because there's less numbers, right? So yeah, you could emphasize more emphasis and suggest maybe the drinking and driving. But I'm just saying that it's tough to limit when he gets slapped by her to, somebody in Washington D.C. is not going to be able to limit that.
I mean, it seems odd that he would go through the whole process before taking off without seeing another person that would have noticed he was.
True. Well, again, think about how many times you've been in restaurants or parties or families and people jump in the car drunk. I mean, you always have a chance to do that. So it comes down to personal responsibility a lot of times too. All right, round of applause, please.